They were like creatures I'd never seen before. "Congrats on marrying my brother! Your dress is so cute! But don't you think mine looks better?" "Oh, come on. Saying that will just make the bride feel bad." It was supposed to be my happiest day. In the bridal dressing room, I was left speechless by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, who made such comments with a sassy attitude. I was shocked, not only by their condescending tone, but also by sister-in-law's outrageous outfit. A dress so white, it could rival any bride's. Her plump thighs were visible through the silt, and she had fur wrapped around her off-shoulder design. Mother-in-law gazed at her daughter with such affection. My husband, on the other hand, looked at his family with cold eyes. I never imagined I'd face such blatant harassment on my wedding day. It was too much to process. Looking back, it's no surprise sister-in-law's matchmaking ended in disaster, given how she acted even at someone else's wedding. My name is Anaya. I was born in a coastal town and grew up in a typical household. When I went to a state university, I stayed with my maternal grandma, who lived nearby. Living with my beloved grandma, who had always doted on me, was my dream. Her well-maintained old house was a mix of Western and ethnic styles with a nostalgic atmosphere. I loved spending time on the balcony overlooking the small garden, chatting with Grandma while munching on seasonal fruit. Even after getting a job, I continued living there. When Grandma fell ill, I took care of the house, hoping she'd return. But that wish never came true. When it became hard for Grandma to live on her own, she moved to a facility in my hometown. "I want to take care of Grandma," I said. But she smiled and replied, "You've done enough. I want you, Anaya, to find happiness." After Grandma passed away, I married Jesse, who had always supported me. Now we live in the house filled with Grandma's memories. But our supposedly peaceful newlywed life is constantly disrupted by those two women. How did someone with such a plain face and skinny body like you manage to marry my brother? One day, I was asked by mother-in-law to prepare lunch for sister-in-law due to a neighborhood association meeting. Instead of gratitude, sister-in-law greeted me with sarcasm. I just wanted to go home, but if I did, they'd just show up at my place. "Ask your brother." Sister-in-law, seemingly satisfied with her own conclusion, said, "Well, maybe you two are a good match, since he's not that great either." She then gulped down the curry I made. I bet she thinks eating in tiny bites in front of men is the secret to being attractive. Sister-in-law might seem devilish, but what's terrifying is her lack of malice. She looks down on everyone, including me and her brother, without a second thought. It's exhausting. Mother-in-law, who raised such a sister-in-law, is of course a handful. Rather than disliking me, mother-in-law seems more interested in elevating her daughter by putting me down and bossing me around. That's why she calls me for such tasks. If I neglect her daughter, she'd either call non-stop or ring my doorbell incessantly. It's a living nightmare. Apparently, mother-in-law always said her daughter was her world and never really cared about her son, my husband. My husband claims he was never abused, but he also says he was never shown any interest. His father went on a work assignment 10 years ago and never returned, even after retirement. He still sends money for living expenses, so it seems neither mother-in-law nor sister-in-law care. My husband tries to address their attitude, but they don't listen. After all, in their eyes, he's just another person to look down upon. Seeing my husband deteriorate more than me was heartbreaking, and I often gave in to mother-in-law's demands, which was my mistake. The two of them became increasingly unbearable, and we, as a couple, grew weary. We couldn't go on like this. Determined, my husband and I decided to hatch a plan. Just as our preparations were almost complete, mother-in-law and sister-in-law unexpectedly showed up at our house. It was a hot summer day. My husband was at work. Reluctantly, I greeted them. "Hello, sister-in-law. What brings you here?" "Just because. We're the cute sister-in-law and mother-in-law. Does it mean we need a reason to visit? You should fix that stingy attitude." "It's hot outside. Let us in. You're so inconsiderate." I really didn't want to let them into Grandma's precious house, but to avoid causing a scene, I reluctantly let them in. I served them coffee and some cookies I baked the day before. What, no cake? I'm sorry, you came unexpectedly. Well, it's okay. Your cooking is decent, even if it's a bit plain. That's true. We'll give you that. Surprisingly, sister-in-law and mother-in-law complimented me. It felt more creepy than pleasant. The house is old, but spacious. It's passable. Passable? To me, this house is perfect. Actually, Elle is getting married. Mother-in-law dropped the bombshell out of the blue. Wait, this self-centered sister-in-law? I was momentarily shocked, but her getting married wasn't that surprising. She often bragged about her curvy body and her straightforward approach with men. It seemed to work on naive men, or those looking for fun. So, with the guy you had an affair with? I recalled a man she once mentioned. It wasn't an affair, we just met in the wrong order. It's true love. But no, not him. The one who approached you recently? I just noticed his intense gaze and approached him first. But no, not him either. Who, then? Elle met him at a speed dating event. He's a wealthy man's son. Mother-in-law proudly announced. That's right, I'm having a shotgun wedding with a rich guy. Good for Elle. Unlike your brother, who married someone like you. She added that she's already pregnant, not forgetting to throw in a dig at me. The speed dating event was about 3 months ago. She probably charmed an unsuspecting man. I feel sorry for him and his family. Did you break up with the other guys? Not yet. They all love me so much, I can't bear to tell them. It's inevitable. Elle is just so lovable. But what really satisfies Elle is money. I had a hunch, but still, I wonder if the child is really from that wealthy man. We want to use this house for our pre-wedding family introduction. Their ulterior motive became clear. I was so repulsed that I blurted out my response. No way! They glared at me, and to avoid a scene, I quickly tried to smooth things over. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I quickly tried to find the right words. I think the Groom's family would prefer to see their future daughter-in-law's actual home. But our place is a bit messy, and it's a small apartment. Then clean it up, and stop smoking inside. But won't they find it strange if they're invited to the bride's brother's house? When I voiced my concern, sister-in-law said, You're not getting it. We'll just say this is Elle's family home. What if they find out the truth? As long as you and your husband keep quiet, it'll be fine. You're getting married. Pretending just for the introduction won't solve anything. Once we're married, he's mine. Plus, I'm pregnant. It's not that simple. You're so sweet to worry. Why not just make this house truly belong to Mom and Dad? Sister-in-law's outrageous suggestions left me speechless. Oh, Elle, what a great idea. This house is old, but we'll take it. This is my grandma's house. It's not just my decision. Don't you know? Once you're married, everything belongs to the husband's family. I've never heard of such a rule. Well, learn it now. What's yours is ours. So, next Sunday, we'll bring the fiancé and his family. Oh, and prepare a lavish and cute meal. Of course, we'll say Elle made it, and change the curtains to match Elle's taste. We're counting on you, sister-in-law. They left after imposing their desires and conveniences on me. All that remained was my seething anger and a pile of dirty dishes. I'm sorry. We won't let them use it. That night, my husband, after hearing the report, apologized with a heavy heart. Of course not. But even if we refuse, they'll just barge in. So, maybe we should move up our plan. I could tolerate the harassment directed at me, but I couldn't stand them disrespecting Grandma's house. We'll get back at them for all the bullying, so brace yourself. The next day, I made several phone calls. Despite the sudden change of plans, everyone was accommodating. I was truly grateful. Once everything was set, I called Mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, I want to ensure Elle's wedding is a success. Can we have a bit more time? We're thinking of remodeling to make it suitable for the couple. Anaya, I misunderstood you. You are such a good person, but we have wedding preparations, so hurry up. I understand. We'll be ready in 3 weeks. Why don't you start looking for a wedding venue? You're so thoughtful, it's almost scary. But yes, we'll leave the introduction to you and focus on the wedding. Was this our first pleasant conversation? And probably our last. Those two fools won't suspect a thing. And they won't come to this house until the day. Alright, we're going to be busy from today. We had a tight deadline. We'd worked tirelessly, sacrificing sleep, but it was for our future. 3 weeks later, the day mother-in-law designated for the introduction arrived. My husband and I anxiously awaited her call. I could almost see mother-in-law's furious face as she dialed. At 10 a.m., my phone rang, displaying mother-in-law's name. I answered the call. Anaya! What have you done? Mother-in-law's hysterical voice pierced my ears. I thought you'd appreciate it. I prepared a perfect vacant land and meal for you and Elle. What have you done? She was probably hurling insults at me, but they weren't coherent. The place she took her fiancé's family to, claiming it was her home, was no longer Grandma's house. I had prepared a new home and meal for them, but it seems they weren't pleased. Mother-in-law's words were still incomprehensible. She probably wanted me to explain the situation to the other party. I'll do just that. I'm sorry if I upset you. Can you put me on speaker so the groom's mother can hear? I apologized to mother-in-law in the most submissive tone I could muster. The shouting stopped, and a refined voice of a woman came on. Are you Aaron's mother? It seems there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, not Aaron? My apologies. So, Aaron finally left his wife for Elle. Or is it Ivan? Phil! No. I listed all the men sister-in-law had been involved with. Anaya, stop it! With mother-in-law's loudest scream yet, the call ended. They were probably in the middle of a huge argument. Ugh, that felt good. Anaya? My husband, who had listened to the entire conversation, looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry for making you do that. I should have handled it. No, remember? I said I wanted to get back at them. One last time. For Grandma's cherished house? Come on, I've explained this. Grandma wanted me to be happy. I love that house, but you're more important to me than it. My mother, Grandma's heir, had planned to demolish the house, and it turned into vacant land. It wasn't earthquake resistant, and maintaining an old house is tough. I had insisting on living there because I loved it. But after marrying my husband and dealing with mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I changed my mind. I didn't want them to tarnish that house, but I didn't want to leave my husband either. So I wanted to say goodbye to Grandma's house, with fond memories. That's why I asked my husband to find a new job, and we prepared to move back to my hometown. We just sped up our plans. I had Grandma's house demolished and built a small doghouse in the middle of the vacant land, with a tag reading L. It was styled like a log cabin, which went slightly over our budget. I filled a small dish with the most expensive dog food from the pet store. Everything was ready. Grandma liked you. She wouldn't want us to break up because of that house. Anaya, I promise I won't waste the chance you've given me. My husband looked at me earnestly. I made this decision because I believed in him. 1.5 years has passed since then. After moving to my hometown, my husband, initially bewildered by the rough-around-the-edges fishermen in the neighborhood, is now even more beloved by them than I am. The coastal town's breeze and the seafood-rich dishes seem to suit him. The once pale complexion he had is now gone. Watching him joyfully devour grilled salmon for dinner fills me with contentment. Did you get any emails today? No, nothing recently. They're probably too busy. We haven't been in touch with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law since that incident. My husband's phone is the only lifeline to them. We heard about the doghouse fiasco from a neighbor who was close to Grandma. The house my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed to Grandma was demolished, leaving only a lone doghouse. From a dog food dish, there was a luxurious scent of foie gras. The two were in a frenzy, repeatedly claiming it was harassment from the brother's wife. After getting a hint over the phone about sister-in-law's questionable taste in men, the fiancé's family confronted them. Panicking, the two couldn't give a straight answer. Later, the fiancé's parents hired a detective to investigate sister-in-law's behavior. Of course, they found nothing but lies and men. This led to a DNA test for the unborn child, revealing it wasn't the wealthy man's. The engagement was naturally called off. The baby's father turned out to be a man sister-in-law had pursued. He was apparently smitten with sister-in-law, delighted to have a child with her, and fortunately, they got married. However, the man's mother was a stubborn woman who adored her son. She was furious that her precious son was taken by an older woman with no morals, and demanded they live together. On the other hand, mother-in-law, upset about her daughter being taken, rented an apartment near the newlyweds, and seemed to be in daily battles with the man's mother. Sister-in-law, who had planned to marry rich and live a luxurious life, now seems exhausted from being bullied by her mother-in-law and handling household chores and childcare. But there's a silver lining. Sister-in-law's husband adores the baby. So, it's safe to say it's all on them. My husband's phone rings. Oh, it's an invitation for drinks from my father-in-law. Your dad is really fond of you, isn't he? I enjoy his stories, and my mother-in-law always prepares my favorite dishes. I realize now my own mother never asked about my favorites. This is what family feels like, my husband murmured. Don't worry, you'll be the kind of parent who knows all their child's favorites. Saying this, I gently rubbed my swelling belly, and he smiled warmly. I feel like we can achieve that in this home. He gazed at the caramel-colored beam on the ceiling. It's a magnificent beam we got when we demolished Grandma's house, incorporated into our newly built home as a memento of beloved Grandma. It was my husband who suggested preserving the beam when all I could think of was tearing everything down. That's why I chose a future with him. Let's make this a wonderful home, as beautiful as Grandma's. Yes, absolutely. In the quiet coastal town where you can hear the waves, stands our small house. This is where we'll build our happiness.
You didn't hear me. A high school grad like you must be hard of hearing too. My kids deserve to be born to a much better woman. Education doesn't matter when it comes to love.
My husband used to say before we got married. Now he belittles me for only having a high school diploma, saying he's going to leave and remarry a woman with an elite college degree.
Ah, what a tragedy to end up with a low-educated woman like you. I'm truly unlucky.
With those bitter parting words, my husband eloped with a college-educated woman. My name is Abigail. I married James, who's 3 years older than me, at 25, and I'm turning 27 this year. I work as an administrative assistant at a trading company with only a high school diploma. We met through a mutual acquaintance from high school. My husband, unlike me, is an elite. He graduated from a prestigious university and works in sales for a big corporation. When we first met, I felt unworthy of his attention, but he kept saying,
"Your degree doesn't matter. I like you for who you are."
So I believed him and we got married. Unfortunately, it turns out that was a mistake. The moment we got married, he started looking down on me for my education and salary. From his perspective, a high school educated woman working at a small trading company must seem inferior, but he's the one who wanted to marry me. During our dating days, he sensed my insecurities and reassured me with kind words. That man is nowhere to be found now.
You should really find a new job, Abigail. Having a wife who works for such a low-paying company is embarrassing.
He shamelessly tells me. But I don't want to work for a demanding company right now because we're trying to conceive. And I also like my current job and company. His cold gaze silences me, my voice gradually shrinking. He sighs as if annoyed and retreats to the bedroom before I can say anything else. He probably assumed we were going to talk about our stagnant efforts to conceive again. He was right. I was hoping for a real discussion with my husband about our struggle to have a baby. From the beginning of our marriage, I always wanted kids, and my husband even optimistically talked about having 3 siblings. But all that was talk in the early days of our marriage, and the reality is that there is no baby in sight. I'd subtly hint at my husband to start thinking about having kids, but he avoided the conversation saying,
"I don't want to raise a kid born to a high school graduate."
His words left me stunned, and since then, we haven't really been able to talk face to face. Marriage had become a lonely affair. He'd belittle me every chance he got, reminding me to be grateful for being picked up by someone as elite as him, all while piling housework on me. And lately, he even stopped providing enough money for daily expenses. Apparently, according to him, I was bad with money and needed to save more. I had already cut corners wherever I could, even dipping into my savings from my single days when things got tough. You'd think I'd won a divorce by now, but fear held me back. The fear that he'd lash out if I brought it up. I was afraid to bring up divorce, worried that my husband would explode in anger. On top of that, I didn't want to betray my parents, who were so thrilled about our marriage and eagerly awaiting the birth of their first grandchild. As our marriage cooled off, my husband started spending less and less time at home. Coming home in the morning became the norm. If he came back drunk late at night, he'd wake me up to make him a snack. And whenever he came home late, I would always smell women's perfume on him. Even without a woman's intuition, it was clear. He was cheating. But I was too scared to confront the truth and kept procrastinating. Then, out of the blue, he said he was leaving.
"My real love is finally pregnant, and I'm moving in with her tomorrow."
Stunned, I listened as he let out an exaggerated sigh.
"Didn't you hear me? You're a high school grad with bad ears too. My exceptional genes are wasted on you."
He kept babbling about things I didn't even ask. Turns out, he was cheating on me with a younger woman who graduated from the same prestigious university as him. He said he was leaving me for her because she is now pregnant.
"She's just starting her career, you see. Taking maternity leave right after joining a company would affect her career. Since I'm such a catch, I've had plenty of matchmaking offerings from my bosses. So I thought, why not marry someone for the time being?"
That someone for the time being was apparently me. Maybe because there was no longer a need to hide. His face looked more grotesque than I had ever seen.
"You work for a small trading company, right? I thought you might have some useful connections or something. But no, you have no valuable contacts and all you do is nag about having kids."
He stared at me intently after saying all this. Seeing me speechless, he snorted, stood up from the sofa, and muttered,
"Ugh, what a tragedy. Marrying someone as uneducated as you. What a waste of my precious time."
He then walked out the front door without even sparing me a glance. I take deep breaths as I hear my husband lock the front door. My tense muscles, tightened by his overbearing demeanor, finally start to relax, and I break out in a cold sweat. Now that I know his schemes, there's no need to hesitate. I quickly finish my dinner that day and lock myself in my bedroom before he gets home. The next morning, I leave for work early and pick up divorce papers on my way. My hands are trembling with nervousness. I manage to unlock the front door, His shoes are gone. Not just the shoes. His favorite slippers and the sofa he loved in the living room are gone too. I searched the entire house, fearing the worst. Sure enough, all of his stuff is missing. I haven't seen him since he left yesterday. I spot a bundle of papers carelessly placed on the table along with a flimsy envelope. I flip through the note, written in his meticulous angular handwriting, to find a filled-out divorce application. The note says to never contact him again, that he's already told his parents. I emotionlessly fill in the blanks on the divorce papers. Not a tear shed. Once finished, I pick up the envelope marked settlement money next to it. It's light, but inside there's $2,000. It must be intended as alimony for the divorce settlement. Though it's a meager amount, it can serve as a retainer for a lawyer to seek proper alimony later. I was planning to visit a law firm on my day off when my phone buzzed. It was my apartment manager, letting me know I owed rent for the past 2 months. They had tried to reach my husband but ended up calling me. My savings, already drained from covering our expenses, wouldn't make a dent. So I had no choice but to use the $2,000 in that envelope. At the law firm, they told me it would be tough to claim any more money. I had spent most of the cash my husband left on rent. Doing that apparently would make it look like I had accepted a divorce settlement. I had a responsibility for the rent too, as we shared a home. I figured my husband knew I was out of savings. He probably left that $2,000 as a way to wash his hands off me, and I had fallen right into his trap. I couldn't survive when most of my income went to rent, so I started working for cheaper places. Eventually, I returned to my parents' home after they learned of my divorce and urged me to come back. They insisted I was still young and encouraged me to find another partner, saying it wasn't too late to have kids. Returning home, my parents kept reminding me that I was still young, that I could find another person if I tried to date again, and that I was not too old to have children. I felt a sense of guilt for disappointing them with the divorce. While commuting to my job, now a bit far from home, I also started dating again. I packed my schedule faster than one might expect for someone who just got divorced, partly because keeping busy helped distract my mind. Perhaps I wanted to overwrite the nightmare of my previous marriage with a fulfilling daily life. My efforts paid off sooner than I had anticipated. Within 2 years after my divorce, I had remarried and given birth to a daughter. My new husband, Daniel, was the same age as me and also a high school graduate. After high school, he worked in an auto repair shop near my parents' house, and we met at a local singles mixer. Daniel was initially concerned about his educational level, but I assured him I wasn't like my ex, who judged people based on their credentials. Daniel, in turn, never looked down on me for my background. He was always generous and accepting. We built our new home close to my parents, and my days were filled with parenting and work. Life was busy, but happy. My thoughts of my ex-husband had long faded into oblivion. I unexpectedly ran into him about 10 years after our divorce. I was attending a Spanish speech and debate competition with my daughter.
"Is that you, Abigail?"
A man called out to me from behind. I turned around. Although he had aged, I immediately recognized the face, one I would rather not have seen. Next to my ex stood a young boy, about the same age as my daughter. Noticing my gaze, my ex-husband said with an unconcerned smile,
"This is my child, with Abby. She's an elite too. Graduated from a national university. The kid has the potential, and we're investing a lot in gifted education."
Abby must be the college-educated woman he ran off with. He takes the liberty to brag about how smart his own child is, regardless of my feelings. As I quietly let it slide, he quickly glances at my daughter.
So, what about your husband? He's a high school grad too, isn't he? Knowing you?
What he says is true, but admitting my current husband is also a high school graduate will likely make his insults worse. Wanting to avoid trouble, I neither confirm nor deny and quickly try to leave the scene with my daughter.
No, I can tell the face of a kid who's a high school grad. They look as dumb as anyone else around. There's no way such a kid could speak fluent Spanish.
His insulting words, thrown at me even as he stepped in my way, left me stunned. In front of my child. He had no qualms about looking down on another child he had just met. I couldn't believe how nasty he was. Though my daughter might not understand what high school grad means, she probably sensed she was being spoken ill of. Seeing her face scrunch up as if she were about to cry, I stared fearlessly at my ex. Would you mind not insulting children? Aren't you ashamed as a father? He brushes off my anger nonchalantly.
Hey, I'm just telling the truth. It's presumptuous for a high school grad to enter a Spanish contest. Just play in the park where you belong.
Having said his piece, my ex-husband grabs his child's hand and vanishes into the crowd. While a deep anger starts to bubble up within me, I catch my daughter's anxious face and rein in my emotions. It's all right. You've practiced a lot. If you do just like you practiced at home, you'll win for sure. Mommy guarantees it. Our eyes meet, and I speak softly to her. I need to stay strong for her. She nods, slowly, digesting my words. After registering, I leave my daughter and enter the spectator area. Now all I can do is believe in her ability. I take a deep breath and wait for her contest to begin. Including my ex-husband's child, most of the young contestants were nervous and stumbled through their speeches. As for my daughter, even without parental bias, I thought she was by far the best, delivering her speech in fluent Spanish without hesitation. My prediction was accurate. She won the Spanish speech and debate contest, holding a large bouquet and with a medal around her neck. We leave the venue hand in hand. Next, we're going to celebrate with some steak, just as planned.
Abigail, wait up!
A loud voice chases after me from behind. I quickly shield my daughter behind me and turn around to face my ex-husband. His eyes are red-rimmed, as if he'd been crying. Peeking out from behind me, my daughter's medal catches his eye, and he looks at it enviously.
How can your kid win first place? There's no way a child raised by a high school grad could be so articulate.
Turns out, he's upset because his own child didn't place, while my daughter won the competition. He rants, assuming that my husband, my daughter, and I couldn't possibly speak Spanish. People leaving the venue glanced at him, puzzled by his outburst, but he seems oblivious.
Where did you enroll her? Or did you hire a tutor with whatever little you make?
We didn't enroll her in any classes, and we didn't hire a tutor, I reply plainly. His eyes widen in disbelief.
No way! You can barely speak Spanish yourself.
Did you forget about my job? His puzzled expression deepens. I work in an import-export office, where speaking some Spanish makes the job easier. Besides, my grandfather lives in Spain. I've been accustomed to Spanish since I was little. My daughter learned it naturally, talking with him. I stroke my daughter's head as she peeks out from behind me. I've conversed in Spanish with my grandfather ever since I can remember. I chose my line of work because it allowed me to use my Spanish skills. My daughter started speaking Spanish naturally because we've been video calling with her great-grandfather to show him how she's growing up. I've never forced her to learn Spanish. All my husband and I did was support our daughter. Follow your passion and you'll excel. As they say, my daughter has grown to converse with her native Spanish-speaking grandfather without needing a translator. My ex starts trembling as he listens to my explanation, his face flushed a deep red, boiling with humiliation. Losing to someone he had looked down on must have been a more significant blow to his ego than he had anticipated.
I can't believe this. I'm going to complain to the organizers. My child was unfairly judged.
In a fit of rage, my ex-husband stormed back into the venue, leaving our child behind. Not wanting to leave my child alone, I waited silently for him to return. Soon enough, security escorted him out of the building, gripping him by both arms. Gritting his teeth, it was clear he wasn't thrilled that my daughter won. As he aggressively approached me, a woman's voice suddenly called out to him. "James, what a coincidence running into you here!" She wore a crisp pantsuit and had an event badge hanging around her neck. My ex-husband's anger cooled as his shoulders tensed up. I couldn't just walk away, so I stood there, keeping my daughter behind me, watching. "So, James, you have a kid. I heard you were single. Is this woman next to you your wife?" Caught off guard, I shook my head vehemently. "No, he's my ex-husband." "Oh, so this child is yours and James's." She eyed the boy standing next to my ex-husband with her piercing gaze. "No, that's the son from the woman he married after divorcing me." Her eyes lit up. Sweating and looking pale, my ex-husband was clearly distressed. What happened next needs no explanation. Sensing impending chaos, I fled the scene. It turns out, after marrying a college-educated woman, he had been having an affair with another educated woman involving in the Spanish speech and debate tournament. She quickly realized she was his side chick upon seeing him with a child. Naturally, the affair infuriated his well-educated wife. She took their child and went back to her parents' house the next day. Now, he's scrambling to pay child support, alimony for the divorce, and education loans. Word got around his office about how he had been serial dating women based on their educational backgrounds, forcing him to resign. As for my daughter, she later participated in the national Spanish speech competition. While she didn't win, her near-native language skills drew much attention, and her interest in Spanish only grew. With my current husband's support, I left my long-time job at a trading company. Now, I teach Spanish from home and assist my grandfather with translating novels.
My sister dumped her corporate boyfriend and stole my fiance, all because she found out he worked at a hospital. Thanks for handing over a doctor boyfriend to me. My sister shamelessly brags about marrying my ex, but she's got one thing wrong. He's not a doctor. I can't wait to see her face when she finds out. My name is Beatrice. I have a younger sister named Catherine, just a year apart. We're not on bad terms or anything, but ever since we were kids, Catherine has always tried to outdo me. She's never satisfied unless she's better than me.
Hey sis, did you get your test back today?
Yeah, just got my math test back.
Let me see. Just as I thought, I scored higher again.
Whenever she scores higher, she flaunts it to our parents. Our parents often praise Catherine more, the one who's always seeking attention over the quiet me. In middle school, Catherine joined the same badminton club as me.
Let's have a match, sis.
By beating me, a senior, Catherine became the star of the club. Whether at school or home, Catherine always got the spotlight. Whenever I tried something, she'd do the same, always trying to outshine me. Still, I never disliked her. Her competitive nature was endearing, and watching her succeed wasn't so bad. But looking back, she probably saw my attitude as being smug. Catherine started to see me as a rival. I was decent at both studies and sport, but I wasn't the type to show off like Catherine. So I wasn't really popular at school. On the other hand, Catherine was always the center of attention, and often got confessions from boys.
You know, a boy from your class confessed to me. Even though you're closer to him, he chose me. Guess I'm more attractive.
Catherine believed that being popular with boys proved her superiority over me. She started dating multiple boys, sometimes even bringing them home to show off.
Sorry for showing off, sis.
She'd act all lovey-dovey with her boyfriend at home, as if to flaunt it to me. But I'm the type who wants a long-term relationship, so I wasn't envious of her frequent change of boyfriends. Noticing this, Catherine began to brag about the quality of her boyfriends.
My current boyfriend goes to Stanford. I also got a confession from a guy at MIT. It was hard to choose.
Throughout college, Catherine dated many guys. After graduation, she started bragging about their jobs instead of their schools.
My new boyfriend works at a listed company. A successful man is the best, right?
Eventually, she introduced her boyfriend to our family, saying she wanted to marry him.
This is Bradley. He's an elite working for a trading company. He said I could even quit my job and become a housewife after we marry.
Bradley, a year older than Catherine, seemed calm and listened to Catherine's stories with a smile.
Sorry, I'm getting married before you, sis. If I waited for you, I'd become a grandma.
Hearing this, Mom looked puzzled. Wait, didn't Beatrice have someone she's dating too? Yeah. I hadn't told Catherine because I didn't want her to feel competitive, but I actually have a fiancé too. Upon hearing this, Catherine bombarded me with questions.
Who is he? Do you have a picture? What does he do? How much does he earn?
I had anticipated this reaction, which is why I hadn't wanted to tell her in the first place. Seeing my hesitation, Catherine suggested a double date.
Why don't we all go out for dinner? You and your boyfriend, and me and Bradley. That should be fine, right?
I wasn't thrilled, but I figured it would satisfy her curiosity. I asked my boyfriend, Reggie, and he agreed. On the day of the date, as soon as Catherine met Reggie, she asked,
Where do you work, Reggie? My Bradley works for a trading company.
I work at a hospital.
A hospital?
Hearing Reggie worked at a hospital, Catherine's face changed instantly.
Why didn't you tell me your boyfriend was a doctor? I would have preferred a doctor over a corporate guy.
Without waiting for my response, Catherine bombarded Reggie with questions.
Which university did you graduate from, Reggie?
Well, it's a specialized field, so I'd rather not say.
Were you from a wealthy family?
My current income doesn't even come close to what my dad made.
You must have had an accomplished father.
Catherine left her boyfriend and chatted nonstop with Reggie. While Catherine and Reggie were engrossed in their conversation, Bradley and I had a casual chat over drinks. If Bradley wasn't such a calm and mature man, he probably would have snapped at Catherine and Reggie. Only someone as patient as him could handle being with Catherine. I hoped this would satisfy her. I even rescheduled a gourmet festival event I was supposed to attend with Reggie to the following weekend. I planned to indulge Reggie's whims on our next date. However, the next week, Reggie suddenly canceled. Beatrice, about our date tomorrow. I got swamped with work. That's okay. I'm sorry for rescheduling in the first place. We decided to spend the weekend separately. With a sudden free weekend, I decided to attend the event alone. On my way, I heard a familiar voice from behind. Beatrice? I turned to see Bradley. Oh, Bradley, are you here for the event too? What a coincidence. Catherine suddenly had work and canceled our date. That's just like me. I was supposed to come with Reggie, but he got caught up with work and had to cancel. Bradley mentioned he learned about the event from Catherine and was interested. Did Catherine know about this event too? I had a bad feeling. Entering the venue, my worst fears were confirmed. I spotted Catherine, arm in arm with Reggie, laughing and enjoying themselves. Unable to hide my shock, I approached my sister. Catherine? Reggie? What's going on here? While Reggie looked uncomfortable, Catherine seemed smug.
Isn't it obvious? I've decided to date Reggie.
What are you talking about? Reggie is my boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend, right? Reggie seems to enjoy my company more than yours.
But you have Bradley. Bradley, standing next to me, seemed lost for words. Catherine glanced at him and said dismissively,
Perfect timing. Bradley, let's break up. I've fallen for Reggie.
Bradley's eyes widen.
Are you serious?
Of course, being a corporate wife is fine, but being a doctor's wife is way more appealing. I was too stunned to process Catherine's words. She had not only stolen my boyfriend, but also dumped hers without a second thought. I couldn't hide my disgust at her actions. Without any remorse, Catherine linked arms with Reggie and left. I can't do it anymore for my little sister, who doesn't even have a shred of ethics like that. I decided to distance myself from such a selfish sister. I didn't contact Catherine after that. It was 6 months later when she called me.
Hey, big sis, I got married.
Married? Don't tell me.
Yes, to Reggie.
She was reporting her marriage to the boyfriend she stole from me. She continued gleefully.
You're too plain for someone like Reggie. That's why I took him from you.
I had moved on from Reggie in those 6 months. After all, he was the kind of guy who shifted his attention from me to Catherine. I didn't miss him. I replied calmly. Oh, so you got married, so did he pay off all his debts?
That's what are you talking about?
He didn't tell you? What had concerned me during our relationship was Reggie's gambling addiction. He was deeply in debt due to his gambling habits. We were waiting for him to pay off his gambling debts before getting married.
I had no idea.
It seems Reggie hadn't told Catherine about his gambling or his debts. Catherine was momentarily speechless, but quickly regained her composure.
Well, Reggie can pay it off quickly. After all, he's a doctor. He must earn more than a corporate guy like Bradley. Thanks for giving me a doctor boyfriend.
I realized Catherine was still under a misconception. I decided to enlighten her. He's not a doctor. He's actually unemployed.
What? But he said he worked at a hospital.
He did work at a hospital as a janitor. It's all about how you phrase it.
But he went to a good college and comes from a wealthy family, right?
He went to a vocational school. That's why he didn't specify when you asked about his college. As for his family, they're just average. His dad, a regular office worker, probably earns more than jobless Reggie. Catherine was speechless, and rightfully so. She switched from Bradley to Reggie because of the supposed salary difference, only to find out that Reggie was just a casual worker, incomparable to a corporate employee like Bradley. After hanging up with me, Catherine apparently confronted Reggie. He confessed that he wasn't going to work every day but was gambling. That wasn't all. Upon their marriage, he had made Catherine the co-signer for his debts. Desperate, Catherine turned to her parents for help, but the debt was too much for her retired parents to handle. Next, she reached out to her ex-boyfriend, Bradley. I, who was at Bradley's place, answered her call.
What? Why are you at Bradley's place?
We've been dating since then. Hearing this, Catherine erupted in anger.
What? How dare you date my ex-boyfriend, you traitor?
Now it was my turn to be furious. You started all of this! I only started dating Bradley after you dumped him. Who in their right mind steals their sister's boyfriend? Bradley took over the call, turning on the speaker so I could hear. From the other end, Catherine's desperate voice came through.
Oh, Bradley. Long time no see. How have you been?
Yeah, I'm good now. Beatrice helped me get through the tough times after you left.
You're really dating her. She took advantage of you when you were vulnerable. You deserve better than her.
Bradley responded coldly.
Beatrice is an amazing woman. Far better than you.
I could almost hear Catherine stomping her foot in frustration.
What? Are you saying I'm inferior to her? I've always been better than her in studies, sports, everything.
Well, maybe in character she's superior.
That's not true. I've always been more popular, had more friends and boyfriends.
Having many boyfriends isn't something to brag about. A woman who can commit to one relationship is far more admirable.
That's just what unpopular girls say. You're only with her because I dumped you. I can come back to you if you want.
No thanks. I can't see myself marrying someone who only looks at titles.
It's only natural to know about your partner before marriage.
All you wanted to know was his salary, right? Even if you did marry, you'd jump ship as soon as a better offer came along.
That's not true.
Really? That's exactly what you did on our date.
I didn't.
Struggling for words, Bradley looked at me and continued.
Even after learning about his debt, Beatrice never abandoned him. She was willing to think together about how to repay the debt and how to cure his gambling addiction, and she silently stepped back without a word of resentment towards the boyfriend who easily betrayed her. Seeing her so different from you, I was increasingly drawn to her.
That's impossible, choosing her over me.
To be honest, I can't believe I ever considered marrying you. I'm just glad I realized it before making that mistake.
Wait, you can't show off someone plain like Beatrice to others. If you're going to marry, it should be with someone like me.
Are you an idiot? You don't marry to show off to others. You marry because you want to spend your life with someone, and that someone is definitely not you. It's Beatrice.
With that, Bradley hung up. Then he turned to me.
Beatrice, I guess that conversation was kind of a proposal, but let me ask you formally, will you marry me?
I joyfully accepted Bradley's proposal. Yes, if you'll have me. Our married life was smooth sailing. He told me,
you can be a stay-at-home mom if you want.
But unlike Catherine, I never aspired to be one. I love my current job, so even after getting married, I chose to continue working. When I was dating Reggie, I was worried if he would help with household chores if we both worked, but Bradley steps up saying, we both work after all. He willingly takes on household tasks. Now, I genuinely feel grateful for marrying him. On the other hand, Catherine still seems to be with Reggie, unable to break up with him. Reggie's gambling addiction hasn't changed. He occasionally gets a part-time job, but he usually spends all his earnings on gambling the same day. Catherine, far from being a stay-at-home mom, seems to be working all the time, day and night, to cover Reggie's share of the expenses. It's the complete opposite of the married life she had imagined. My younger sister, who was so fixated on having a better life than me, now seems to be far behind in terms of quality of life. However, it's all due to her own choices. Her current situation is the result of betraying me. The one who probably regrets the most is Catherine herself.
You're already married, aren't you? Going back to your parents' house is just too soft. If you go back, don't ever come back to this house again. Kanae yells this as she blocks my path after hearing that my dad got injured and I was planning to go back home. I just nodded silently. Understood. I won't come back, so I'll go home to my parents. My name is Jessie. Louis, my husband, and I have been together since middle school, and we ended up marrying each other. We've only had eyes for each other since our first love. Both our parents were thrilled with how well we got along, and it helped that they were friends since we're from the same hometown. The reason we moved into Louis' family's house after getting married was because they had a spacious home with extra rooms. We got married right after college and had been saving money appropriately for our age. But both sets of parents told us it would be fine to live together until we saved up some more money. So we ended up living in Louis' family home where a room was waiting for us. Both Louis and I were exhausted from adjusting to our new lives when we started our first jobs. We felt grateful that we could live with his family. My in-laws treated me like their own daughter, and there was absolutely no issue in mine and Louis' married life. That is, until Lyra came back home. Lyra is Louis' older sister, 2 years his senior. She had been mean to me ever since I started dating Louis in middle school. She said things like I wasn't good enough for him, or that he had poor taste. Louis always defended me and wondered why Lyra would say such things. Lyra worked for a company that required her to relocate, and she moved to the city shortly after starting her job. One of the reasons I agreed to move into Louis' family home was because Lyra wasn't there. Another reason I agreed to live in Louis' family home was because Lyra wasn't around. If Lyra had still been living there, I would have flat out refused to move in. However, as fate would have it, Lyra was reassigned to our hometown. When I shared my concerns with Louis, he said, "Lyra is an adult now. She won't say anything weird." True, the times Lyra bullied me were back in high school. After she went to college, she rarely came home, and we stopped running into each other even when I visited the family home. At our wedding, although she didn't speak to me, I remember seeing Lyra crying. It made me think maybe we could get along, but that was a big mistake. After returning home, Lyra acted normally toward me in front of Louis and his parents. I thought maybe she had matured and her edginess was gone. But then, one day when I luckily had some time off, I was enjoying a book in my room. Lyra, who also happened to be off that day, walked into my and Louis' room without knocking. "Hey, how long are you gonna laze around? Could you hurry up and make some food? I'm hungry." Lyra wore a look she'd never show in front of Louis or his parents. Taken aback by Lyra's eyes, filled with what seemed like hatred, I put down my book and said, "All right, let's make some food," and headed to the kitchen. Drinking in the middle of the day, Lyra acted as though I should naturally be the one cooking. She'd never acted this way when Louis and his parents were around. Feeling deceived, wondering if she'd been hiding her true self all this time, I quickly made lunch. Lyra took one bite, then stood up with her plate. There's no way I can eat something this terrible. Jesse, why did you even marry Louis? He really doesn't know how to pick 'em. Poor guy. Glaring at me, Lyra took her plate straight to the trash. She threw away the food I had made right in front of me. Go buy some alcohol. After eating your awful cooking, it feels like my tongue is rotting. I want to disinfect it with alcohol, so go get some now. I was pretty steamed, but I had planned on going shopping anyway, so I got her some alcohol. To spite her, I bought non-alcoholic beer. Lyra was furious. I retorted, "Don't treat me like a minion," which escalated into an argument. Still mad, Lyra retreated to her room. When Louis came home, she instantly switched back to her gentle demeanor, a quick change that sent shivers down my spine. That night, I discussed Lyra with Louis, but for some reason, his attitude was cold. Lately, every time he looks at me, his expression is complicated. We used to always share the double bed, but now he's sometimes sleeping on the living room couch. When I asked why, he said, "Just couldn't sleep, so I stayed in the living room." I've been wondering what's going on ever since. I was saddened by his sudden coldness. When Louis said, "Instead of blaming Lyra, don't you think you have some things to reflect on yourself?" I couldn't help but tear up. Since middle school, Louis has always been kind to me, and yet I've been troubled lately by his sudden coldness. Being mistreated by Lyra, and now feeling this coldness from Louis, felt like salt being rubbed into an emotional wound. I couldn't help but cry. Louis looked surprised, but he didn't comfort me. Seeming perplexed, he paced around for a bit before sitting down next to me, who was sitting on the bed with a determined look on his face. There's something I've been meaning to ask, but haven't. What is it? Are you having an affair? I was so surprised by the sudden mention of affair that my tears stopped. I swear my heart has never strayed from Louis. Shaking my head, I say, "No, I'm not. Why would you ask something like that?" Louis then shows me a picture on his phone. The picture shows me talking to a man who has his hand on my shoulder. Both the man and I are smiling, but this is by no means a photo of infidelity. "You're mistaken. Look closely. Yeah, he's put on some weight, but that's Andy, our classmate. Don't you remember him? He was on the baseball team. This was taken when we bumped into each other after so long, and he said, 'You look well,' and patted my shoulder." Louis zooms in on the photo and says, "Really? Andy?" with a skeptical look. Frowning and looking closely at the man's face, Louis asks, "Is that really Andy? Andy is getting married soon. There's no way I'd have an affair. Why would you even suspect that?" "Well, Lyra sent me this picture saying you were cheating. She also said she saw you coming home late with Andy recently. And then she sent me this photo." "Why would you believe Lyra over me? Is that why you've been cold to me?" "Sorry, you have been coming home late and I was worried. I've become a senior at work too, so sometimes I come home late because I'm teaching my colleagues." "I see. Oh, thank goodness. I'm really sorry." Louis breathes a sigh of relief. Slightly tapping his back as a little payback for doubting me, I say, "Geez." Louis says, "Sorry," and apologizes again. From then on, Louis changed his attitude and started treating me kindly like he used to. It was good to get back to being a loving couple, but my distrust towards Lyra increased. I became convinced that Lyra wanted to kick me out of this home for some reason, so I started wondering how to expose her true colors in front of my in-laws. On another day when Lyra and I both had time off, Lyra came and demanded that I make lunch like she used to. "Why can't you be considerate? Do you know what time it is? Hurry up and make lunch," she says, but it's only 10 a.m. It feels too early for lunch to me. "Lyra, you could make something if you want. You cook on your days off, don't you?" "What? Cooking is a wife's job, isn't it? I only do chores to keep the family harmony, you know." Just as I'm getting frustrated with Lyra urging me to cook, my phone rings. Ignoring Lyra, who's been drinking since the morning, I answer the call. My mom's voice comes through, sounding urgent. "Jesse? Oh, thank goodness you picked up. Your dad's in trouble. He tripped at the front door and seems to have hurt his ankle." I can tell from my mom's voice she's really flustered, and I sense this is an emergency for my parents. I'm coming right now, just wait, I say as I hang up the phone and start to get ready. Lyra, who told me to cook, now looks annoyed as she sees me getting ready to go out and says, "What are you doing?" "It looks like my dad got injured, so I'm going to my parents' house." "What? You're married now, aren't you? Going back to your parents' house is too lenient. If you're going home, don't bother coming back here." I couldn't take it anymore, standing in front of Lyra, who was blocking my way out. Why do I have to deal with this kind of spiteful attitude? I was absolutely fed up with being treated so unfairly by Lyra. "Fine, I won't come back. I'll go to my parents' house," I state calmly, and Lyra steps aside with a pleased expression. "Don't ever come back." Lyra cheerfully sees me off at the door, her alcohol stench unbearable. Rushing back home, I found my dad's ankle was severely bruised. Mom was visibly panicked, so I drove him to the hospital where they confirmed it was a severe sprain. Due to the condition, my dad had no choice but to use crutches, so I decided to stay with my parents for a while. I thought this was a good opportunity, especially since Lyra had told me not to come back. I informed Louie and my in-laws over the phone about my dad's injury and my strained relationship with Lyra, letting them know that I'd be staying at my parents' home for a while. My in-laws said they would talk some sense into Lyra. Louie then said, "Well, I'll come live at your family's home too." My parents get along well with Louie, so they were pleased, albeit a bit apologetic for the inconvenience. I received a text from Lyra saying, "Why would you tell my parents? Aren't you embarrassed to tattle like a child?" I just read it and ignored it. It seems Louie got a text from Lyra saying, "Aren't you coming back? Living at Jesse's family home must be tough." Louie responded, "I'll go where Jesse is," and we didn't hear from Lyra after that. My dad's recovery was slower than expected. He spent about 3 months on crutches and in a wheelchair. My dad seemed both grateful and happy for Louie's various help around the house. Just when I was feeling grateful for being married to Louie, Lyra sent a shocking message my way. "I'm bringing my boyfriend over. Since you're technically my sister-in-law, you have permission to come home for just 1 day. Be polite and greet him properly. Don't say anything unnecessary." I felt repulsed by the selfishness of her text, but the message Lyra sent to Louie was even more off-putting. Her message said, "My boyfriend is coming to greet the family, so come home, Louie. I might be getting married, but you'll always be important to me." Louie commented, "Lyra's texts are always so poetic, aren't they?" But thanks to my woman's intuition, I had a good idea of how Lyra really felt about Louie. To protect Louie and our marriage, I decided to turn this meeting into a stage for my revenge, regardless of how Lyra's boyfriend might feel. After being allowed to return to my in-laws' house after a long time, I received multiple apologies from them. They told me Lyra was going to pick up her boyfriend and that they'd make sure she apologized to me afterwards. "Oh, it's fine as long as Lyra stops being malicious. That's all I really want," I replied with a genuine smile. Plus, I'm sure that after my revenge, Lyra won't dare to be nasty to me anymore. The man Lyra brought with her seemed serious enough, but what shocked Louie and my in-laws the most was how much he looked like Louie. From the aura to the facial features, they were identical, leaving my in-laws exchanging surprised glances. It was clear that Lyra's boyfriend also noticed the resemblance. As he stood there in surprise, Lyra cheerfully said, "Come on in, come on in." Louie whispered to me, "Isn't that guy way too similar to me?" "I told you so, didn't I?" was my reply. I had let Louie know beforehand that I was planning some revenge. Louie had told me I didn't have to go that far, but when I explained my reasons, he seemed torn between believing me or not. However, after seeing the guy's face, Louie seemed to finally understand why I felt the need for revenge. Though the awkward expression on Louie's face showed his mixed feelings, my resolve to make Lyra learn her lesson the hard way was reaffirmed. "My name is Jackson. I'm considering marriage with Lyra. Nice to meet you all." My in-laws welcomed Jackson's polite introduction with smiles. Lyra seemed really happy and started downing drinks like there's no tomorrow. Jackson, who had seemed a little tense, started to relax more, thanks to my in-laws' warm demeanor. As we all were engaged in light conversation, a tipsy Lyra rested her head on Louie's shoulder, not Jackson's. This is fun. Louie, you must be feeling lonely, huh? Knowing that I'm getting married. No, not at all. You know, Jackson here looks just like Louie. That's why I thought about getting married. The resemblance between Jackson's face and Louie's had been the elephant in the room, something nobody had mentioned until now. But Lyra, probably due to being intoxicated, not only brought it up, but also revealed that it was her reason for considering marriage. The atmosphere changes immediately as Lyra's words turn my in-laws' faces pale. Lyra, realizing she may have said too much, tries to laugh it off. Just kidding! But I didn't let this opportunity slip away. Lyra, you can't be serious. Before my father-in-law can say anything more, I interrupt. I can't bear to let this sad tale come from my in-laws' mouths. And more importantly, I need Lyra to realize that Louie is my husband, not just a family friend. Jackson, did you know? I hate to spill family secrets, but Lyra and Louie are not actually blood related. My in-laws had children from previous marriages and then got remarried. What? He looks at Lyra in surprise. Lyra quickly puts distance between herself and Louie and glares at me. Undeterred, I take out my phone and place it on the table. I've had my suspicions for a while. Lyra has been treating me poorly, and I've wondered why. As I say this, I press the play button on the voice recorder app on my phone. What flows out are the sounds of Lyra berating me. The recording is filled with Lyra's desperate voice saying things like, "Break up with Louie," and "Leave this house." Realizing the gravity of the situation, my in-laws utter in despair, "This can't be." But I turn to Lyra, who is now biting her lip and pale as a ghost, and give her a smile. Lyra, you've had feelings for Louie for a long time, haven't you? That's why you've been trying to drive me away. No, that's not it. Louie is my precious younger brother. Then why did you plan to marry Jackson because he looks like Louie? Well, that's... Jackson, you told me that you met Lyra in a bar, right? What was that encounter like? Caught off guard by the sudden question, Jackson replies with a trembling voice. We met while I was drinking at a bar. She told me she liked my face. That's how it all started. My mother-in-law lets out a sorrowful, "Oh," and starts to cry, while my father-in-law looks at Lyra with a serious expression. Lyra's biological father, my father-in-law, finally broke his silence. Lyra, did you have feelings for Louie? The heartfelt greeting I had prepared for Lyra's future husband was because I'd realized she had her sights set on Louie. Although Lyra herself never admitted it, her behavior over time made it increasingly obvious that she saw Louie not just as a brother, but as a man. While I had hoped it wasn't true, I grew more and more certain that the relationship was more than sibling affection. Suddenly, Lyra bursts into tears and buries her face in the table. I couldn't help it. I've loved him ever since our parents got married when I was in elementary school, and I met Louie. There are stories like this in girls' comics, you know, where the parents remarry and their children start dating. I had always dreamed that would happen with Louie and me, and then you came along and stole him. Jackson, listening to Lyra's tearful outburst, starts to complain of a headache and says he's leaving. Lyra clung to Jackson, but her father intervened, saying he'd go apologize to Jackson later. Lyra was clearly distraught, crying uncontrollably, but neither Louie nor I could do anything to console her. Lyra, I've always seen you as a real sister, but that's all it's ever been. With those words, Louie addressed Lyra, who was sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, her cries quieted down, but then she burst into loud, childlike sobs again. I felt some pity, but it didn't change the fact that Lyra had been mean to me. Relieved that I had gotten my revenge, and that Lyra would no longer be pursuing Louie, we left for my parents' home. Later, we learned that Lyra had been diagnosed with alcohol dependency at the hospital. She was also found to be mentally unstable and had taken time off work to isolate herself. After talking it over with my in-laws, Louie and I finally decided to move out and start our life together. My in-laws kept apologizing to me, but I told them there was no need. Love can make people do crazy things, after all. I couldn't forgive what Lyra had done, but I did feel sorry for her. I hope she can move on from her feelings for Louis and find a new direction in life. Louis and I got off to a great start living together. We rented a house close to both our parents so we could easily help them if needed. Starting this new chapter brought back the excitement we felt as newlyweds. Louis and I plan to continue being a loving couple and live happily ever after.
Lately, something seemed off with my mom, who lives alone. The first thing that came to my mind was Alzheimer's. I suggested to my husband and mother-in-law that my mom move in with us, but they didn't agree. Worse, my husband said,
If you push this, we're getting a divorce. Just leave.
Fine, I get it. If you want me to leave, I will, but you will regret it. My name is Astoria, 35 years old. I work from home as an illustrator. Currently, I live with my husband, Powell, and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after the passing of my father-in-law, we decided to live with my mother-in-law. I was concerned about her, so I agreed to this arrangement. We had just built a new house, so space wasn't an issue. We easily prepared a room for her. However, my husband doesn't earn much. We couldn't afford a house on our own, so my mom helped us financially. My mother-in-law seemed thrilled about the decision, especially since Powell is her only son. After the loss of her husband, she began to smile more and seemed to regain her spirit in a few months. But that peace didn't last long. About 6 months into our living arrangement, she started picking on me. One morning, after eating the breakfast I prepared, she sighed heavily.
Oh, this tastes terrible.
What?
I've thought this for a while now, Astoria. Why do you serve me such salty food? What's your intention?
I'm sorry. I tasted it before serving.
I don't want to hear excuses. Are you trying to send me to an early grave with all this salt?
No, I didn't mean to. And when I'd be working in my room, she would barge in without knocking.
Astoria, stop hiding in your room and do some housework.
But I'm working right now.
Work? Sitting at your computer and drawing isn't work. How is that a job?
This is my job. Yes, I draw, but it's not just for fun.
Don't talk back to me. If you do, I'll tell Powell you're neglecting your duties.
That's not true. But that was just the beginning. She even started asking me for money.
Just $500 will do, Astoria.
I can't afford that right now.
Stingy. Aren't you earning money with your computer?
It's so cheeky of her to mention earning only when she wants money. In the end, I gave in and handed her the money. This went on for a while, and with my work suffering, my frustration grew. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to my husband. Hey, Powell, can we talk?
What? I just got back from work and I'm tired.
I'm sorry, but can we do something about your mom?
What about her?
She interrupts my work daily, complains about the chores, and even asks for money. I can't get any work done and it's really stressing me out. He looked annoyed and responded sarcastically.
You know, you don't have to consult me about every little thing.
What?
When mom acts like that, it means you're not doing your job as a wife, right? It's your fault. Besides, she's a housewife. Why can't you just give her some spending money willingly?
Wait a minute, I do all the housework, and why should I be the one giving her money?
Because if you were doing the housework properly, she wouldn't be upset. Understand that? Think of the money as a token of gratitude. It's a fee for her guidance on your poor housekeeping.
That's not... I was dizzy from my husband's unexpected words. Instead of support, he blamed me. He continued looking down at me.
Listen, you're the wife here. You're married into my family. Just listen and do as you're told.
But...
Wyatt, mom has been a housewife longer than you. She knows more. Her word is law. Got it?
But...
From now on, if you upset mom, I won't forgive you. Just do your job as a wife perfectly. Understand?
With a face like a gargoyle, he stormed out of the room. Tears streamed down my face. Why is it always me? Why am I the one being blamed? We started living together thinking it was a good thing, but I never expected it to turn out like this. I deeply regretted agreeing to live with them. One day, I felt like hearing my mom's voice, so I called her. Mom, it's me, Astoria.
Oh, Astoria.
It's been so long since you last called. What have you been up to? It's only been 2 days since we last spoke. What are you talking about? You haven't contacted me in 2 months. What? I had a bad feeling our conversation wasn't making sense. The word Alzheimer's crossed my mind. Worried, I took my mom to the hospital the next day. My fears were confirmed. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Though it was mild, the doctor said it would be difficult for her to live alone. She had me late in life, so she's already well into her 70s. I couldn't believe that my energetic mom had Alzheimer's. That night, I told my husband and mother-in-law about the diagnosis. Mother-in-law, Powell, I need to talk to you about something. They both looked annoyed.
What is it? It's probably nothing important.
Is it even relevant to us?
It's about my mom. Today, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
What? Alzheimer's?
Your mom? Seriously?
Yes, so about what we should do. Before I could finish, they burst into laughter.
Poor thing, having Alzheimer's. I don't want to be involved with sick people.
Right, how weak must her brain be to get Alzheimer's at her age?
Wait, why are you saying such things? Ignoring my confusion, they continued laughing.
People who get Alzheimer's are those who don't think much in their daily lives.
Yeah, just like you, not thinking much. That's why you'll get Alzheimer's.
Stop it. How can you say such cruel things?
Why not? It's the truth, right?
Yeah, Mom, we're just telling the truth.
This is too much. Everything went dark as their cruelty overwhelmed me.
You're not thinking of taking care of your mom, are you?
Well, I was hoping, if possible, for her to live with us here.
What? Are you kidding me? Why should we live with someone with Alzheimer's?
She's not just someone with Alzheimer's, she's still in her early stages and can take care of herself.
That's not the point. We're not living with her, period.
I accepted living with your mother, so why not mine? Suddenly, my husband slammed the table and glared at me.
Don't compare a healthy person like my mom to your sick mother, got it? I will never agree to live with her.
But if something happens to her, I'll regret it forever.
I don't care about your regrets. You married into this family. Just listen to us.
No matter how much I tried to persuade them, their stance remained unchanged. So I made another proposal. If we can't live together, at least let me visit her regularly.
What? If you do that, we'll take care of the house.
I'll manage the housework. I'm just really worried about her, please.
No?
Why not?
Obviously, every time you visit her, it will cost money. And we will have to pay for her medical bills. Our finances will suffer.
It's my money.
No, you're not visiting her. End of story.
Far from living with Mom, I was not even allowed to go to her place and I'm completely stuck in all directions. Even mother-in-law, who was listening to the conversation, added a blow to me.
Astoria, do you even understand your position here?
Mother-in-law, please, I am really worried about her.
Enough. You're part of the Brown family now. Just listen to Powell and me. But enough. If you keep this up, we'll divorce. How dare you defy us? Get out.
Hearing the word divorce from her, my husband joined in, barely holding back his laughter.
Hey, divorce sounds good. We don't need a wife who prioritizes a sick person over her own family.
Are you serious?
You call yourself an illustrator, but you barely make anything. You're so arrogant.
It's a real job.
Enough. Let's divorce. If you want to take care of a sick person so badly, just leave.
All the anger I had been holding back exploded. I won't let them mock me or my mom. They're not my family anymore. If that's how they feel, I'll leave. With my mind made up, I told them, fine, if that's how you feel, I'll leave. For a moment, they looked shocked, but then they smirked.
Good. Do what you want, just leave quickly.
I never thought you would leave on your own. I'm so happy.
I'll pack my things and go back to my parents' house, send the divorce papers by mail.
Sure thing. I'll get them from the courthouse tomorrow and send them right over.
This is perfect. Just my lovely son and me living together.
I'll go pack my things now.
Hurry up, we're having a party with Mom tonight.
Sounds great. Let's go out for steak.
This family is done. Watching them celebrate, I quickly started packing. Soon, with the two of them smiling broadly, I left that house behind. A few days later, I received divorce papers from my husband, which I promptly signed and submitted. When I told my mom, she looked apologetic. I'm so sorry, Astoria. This is all because of me. Don't be silly. I feel so much better without those terrible people as family. When you first mentioned living together, I was actually worried. That mother-in-law, she's a bit off, right? I should have stopped the construction of the new house more firmly. I'm truly sorry. Don't apologize. I'm happy now, living here with you. Astoria, thank you so much. So, is that matter all settled? Yes, it's all good. I'm already on it. I showed her the documents and my mom smirked mischievously. That's right. I won't let it end with just a divorce. My revenge is just beginning. 2 weeks later, just as I expected, I received a frantic call from my husband.
Hey, what the hell are you thinking?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean. I got the house sale documents. You sent them, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It's all written there. Any problems?
Don't play games. Selling our house, I'll never allow it.
The first thing I did after divorcing my husband was to sell the house we lived in with his mother. He seemed to have forgotten about the time we built the house and angrily confronted me.
Why can't you sell that house? It's ours.
Ours? Really?
It's our marital property. We're divorced, so we need to split the assets fairly.
His absurd claim made me burst into laughter. Are you kidding? Split assets? Don't make me laugh.
What's so funny?
Do you even realize why we were always short on money?
That's because you never earned enough. I have savings.
You're wrong.
What?
I had to give money to your mother almost every day. That's why my savings are almost gone. If we were to split assets, I would just take half of your savings.
You're joking, right?
It seemed he didn't know that my savings were almost depleted. Still, he persisted.
But we have the house, our house.
I told you, I'm selling it.
You can't decide that on your own. My mom and I live here. If you insist on selling, give me half the sale price.
Remember when we bought the house, my mom paid for it in full because we couldn't get a loan?
Did she?
Yes, at that time I wasn't earning much and you had just changed jobs with a low salary. My mom paid for the whole thing. I recently checked the property deed with her. The house is in her name.
Oh, I remember now. I left everything to you.
I thought so. But now you understand, right? We don't have the right to decide whether to sell the house. It's up to my mom. And she's on my side, get it?
Damn it.
Finally realizing his position, my husband pleaded in a tearful voice.
Please, wait, what will happen to my mom and me without this house?
I don't care. We filed for divorce, so we are strangers now. I owe you nothing.
Don't say that. I apologize for everything. Just leave the house, please.
So what's your plan? Buy the house in full from my mom?
Don't joke. That's impossible, you heartless woman.
My husband seemed to have let his true feelings slip, showing an awkward reaction with a hesitant, Seizing the moment, I fired back at him. Now you're asking for help? You think that's going to fly after all this time? Are you out of your mind? After all the times you and your mom belittled me, you think we can just pretend it never happened? You brought this on yourself.
Please, wait, I'm begging you.
I'm genuinely relieved to cut ties with you and your terrible mother. From now on, it's just me and my mom. I couldn't care less about what happens to you two. I hope you both sink to the lowest depths together. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response and blocked his number. And just like that, I was finally free from them. Later on, I heard they moved out of their house and started living in a cramped apartment. With his meager salary and his mother, who had only ever been a housewife, their downfall was easy to imagine. Now, his mother apparently works a hectic part-time job at a supermarket. On the other hand, my mom and I are living peacefully. Thankfully, her Alzheimer's is still in the early stages. However, I know it's going to get tougher in the future. That's why I want to spend as much time as possible with my mom, my only family. I've made a promise to myself to cherish every moment I have left with her.
Really? Steak for Christmas? What kind of joke is this? Even on a festive occasion like Christmas, this woman never misses an opportunity to belittle my husband, Ethan, and me. I've graced this house with my presence, along with Joshua. The least you could do is say thank you and serve some prime steak, you know? Rachel, you really? Oh, come on. You guys probably haven't even had prime steak before, have you? You're just cooking class instructors after all.
I couldn't take her condescending laughter anymore and finally raised my voice. Rachel, what have Ethan and I ever done to you? Me hold a grudge against you two? Don't be ridiculous. You're not even worth my time. Then why do this to us? How can you behave this way toward the parents of the man you married? My words, infused with emotion and frustration, didn't touch Rachel's heart. And then it happened. Ethan, who had been silent, grabbed a bottle of beer from the table and splashed it on Rachel. For the first time, we saw Ethan genuinely angry, which made Rachel take a pause, but not for long. Fine, have it your way. I'll tell Joshua about this, she said, making her way to exit the room with as much bravado as she entered. But the door swung open before she could leave.
There's no need for that.
What? The man who appeared was Joshua, and Rachel would soon face the consequences of her reckless behavior. My name is Lily Johnson, a 70-year-old who runs a modest cooking school in Boston. I have a family that consists of my husband Ethan and our son Joshua. We run the cooking class together. We're not a big name in the culinary world. We rent a room in a community center in Boston. Joshua's in-laws run a major company specializing in cultural centers, and they provide the financial backing and ingredients needed for the operation. Thanks to the support from this major company, the class has been able to continue for a long time. The instructors and local people alike enjoy building relationships through cooking. We've even started getting attendees who come from far away saying, "Yours is the only class where we can enjoy good food and good company." This makes me sincerely grateful for my life as a cooking class instructor. As for Joshua, he's now 42 and has recently been appointed to the president of the company he works for. He's a hardworking and personable individual, and his talents have not gone unnoticed. He's being groomed to take over the leadership of the company. Continuing from the previous scenario, Joshua's career and popularity didn't waver even after he became the company president. In fact, under his leadership, the company flourished, increasing its scale and asset value. During this time of Joshua's success, Ethan and I met her. One day, Joshua brought home a woman as his fiancée. Her name was Rachel. In her early 40s, just like Joshua, she was strikingly beautiful for her age, which took my breath away. However, as soon as Rachel stepped into our home, she whispered loud enough for only us to hear. "Seriously? This tiny, rundown place is Joshua's family home? This has got to be a joke." Both Ethan and I were taken aback by her sudden negative comments. Thinking it might be a misunderstanding, we escorted her into the living room. When introduced by Joshua, Rachel greeted us politely and humbly, as if her earlier comment was a lie. "What a distinguished home you have. I'm so envious. You're both so sophisticated, teaching cooking classes and all." Convinced that we must have misunderstood her earlier, we celebrated their union. They soon got married, but looking back, Rachel's charm was probably a facade to win Joshua and us over. The evidence became clear shortly after the wedding. One day, Ethan approached Rachel, who was lounging on our sofa playing mobile games.
"Hey Rachel, could you help me out with something?"
Rachel's response was disdainful. "What? You want me to help with what? Housework?"
"Wait, hold on. Why are you acting like we're ordering you around?"
"You asked for help, didn't you? I bet it's tedious chores like cleaning or laundry. Absolutely not my thing." Ignoring Ethan, she stayed put, making a face. Rachel considered our home as her personal retreat, making Ethan and me do all the cooking and cleaning. At times, she even threw objects at us, creating daily tension.
We finally asked her to stop treating our home like a vacation spot. But Rachel retorted, "What do you mean, vacation spot? You told me to feel at home, remember?"
Yes, but we didn't say you could treat us like servants. We're family after all.
Then hire a housekeeper or a homemaid. You're the ones choosing to do all these troublesome things. Stunned, Ethan and I were at a loss for words. While it's true we know about housekeepers and homemaids, they're not a feasible solution for daily needs. Above all, Rachel always seemed to think about money, as evidenced by her suggestion to hire help. It seemed like she wanted to solve everything with cash. This woman is seriously something else. Every day, I found myself sighing, wondering why Joshua ever married a woman like this. Day after day, Ethan and I would talk about what to do, but we couldn't come up with a solution on our own. We tried multiple times to get Joshua to reduce the number of days he and his wife visited, but Joshua's work schedule made it difficult to even talk. Even when we did talk, Joshua wouldn't give a clear answer. He blamed his busy work schedule and the fact that he couldn't take care of his wife because of it. Joshua had warned Rachel a few times, but she'd just play innocent and say, "Oh, my in-laws are being mean again? They're just jealous because I'm so cute, haha." That passive-aggressive attitude, along with Joshua's own indecisiveness, only fueled Rachel's bad behavior even more. And then, in the midst of this growing concern, Rachel finally crossed a line that should never be crossed. They came to visit us for Christmas. Joshua told us the day before that Rachel would be joining him, and Ethan and I were not thrilled. However, when Rachel is with Joshua, she behaves reasonably well. So we thought it would be fine. We had that hope when we greeted Joshua and Rachel. But then Rachel started acting up while Joshua was in the shower. "Excuse me? Christmas is about steak, right? What is this joke? Are you saying this is a Christmas meal?" Upon seeing the dishes we had prepared, including a gratin, Rachel started complaining. "I came here with Joshua for Christmas. You should thank us and have some prime steak ready, haha." "Rachel, you really? Well, you guys are just poor cooking class instructors. Maybe you've never even eaten such a thing, hahaha." Rachel broke into a condescending laugh. Even on Christmas, I couldn't believe she would act this way toward Ethan and me. Is this woman even the same species as us? And why on earth did Joshua pick someone like her? I couldn't take her ugliness anymore and blurted out, "Rachel, do you have a grudge against Ethan and me or something?" "A grudge? Don't be stupid. I have no interest in or grudges against old farts like you, haha." "Then why treat Ethan and me like this? How can you act this way towards the parents of the man you married?" I pleaded with anger and deep emotion, but it didn't reach her. "I live as I please, doing what I think is right, haha. That's all there is to it." At that moment, after her final snicker, Ethan, who had been silent and probably enduring her verbal abuse just like me, finally made his move. He grabbed a beer bottle that was on the table with the food and swiftly opened it. In the brief moment Rachel stopped laughing to take notice, Ethan poured the beer all over her, wordlessly. "What the heck, Ethan? Why'd you do that?" Startled by this sudden turn of events, Rachel snaps at Ethan. With a stern look, Ethan locks eyes with Rachel and quietly says,
"Enough. If you dislike being around us so much, then fine. Don't ever come back."
Hearing these words, I felt as though I had awoken from a trance. Meanwhile, Rachel, already fuming over the beer incident, gets even angrier. "Who do you think you are? Acting all high and mighty? You think this ends without consequences?" Frustrated by Rachel's lack of remorse, I couldn't help but sigh. Now, awake to Ethan's actions and words that must have spoken for my feelings, I no longer have the patience to listen to this woman. Up to now, I've put up with her because she's the wife of my precious only son Ethan. But this is the last straw.
Then show me what these consequences are, if you can.
Oh, I will. I'll tell Joshua right now. With that, Rachel storms out of the room, still carrying an air of arrogance. But then the door swings open again.
No need for that.
Huh? Rachel's eyes widen in surprise. The person entering the room is none other than Joshua. At first, we thought he had come out of the shower, but seeing that he wasn't wetter changed, we quickly realized that wasn't the case. Rachel recovers and clings to Joshua. Listen, Joshua, your parents are terrible.
What's so terrible about Dad and Mom?
They just splashed beer on me. Make them realize their mistake, Joshua. Use your influence. Taken aback by Rachel's unfiltered words, Joshua hesitates for a moment. Then, clearing his throat, he says,
I get what you're upset about, but what exactly do you expect me to do to Dad and Mom?
Interrupting, Rachel continues, That's why I said, use your power as the CEO to make them realize. Stop supporting their cooking classes or something. It seems that getting splashed with beer has caused Rachel to lose her cool, revealing her true nature. We decide to speak up. Sorry, but that's not gonna happen. What do you mean by that?
We're not just running a cooking class. Your dad, who was the previous CEO of your family's company, and his predecessor, your grandfather, have a long-standing relationship with us.
What? Yes, that's right. We've known my parents-in-law since Joshua and Rachel got married. My stepfather, who was the CEO 2 generations ago, was friends with my parents, who previously managed the cooking class. Their friendship deepened because my step-grandfather also had a passion for cooking. That led to us receiving financial support and sharing the joy of cooking. With their children, the parents-in-laws, the hobby of cooking was passed on to us, along with assistance, and so it has been. Joshua knew about this, and it was because he had immense respect for our passion for cooking that he valued his relationship with his parents and us. Well, that's the gist of it.
People at the company understand your parents and Joshua's philosophy.
Which means you can't meddle with our cooking class. What a pity for you. As we said this, Ethan and I couldn't help but laugh. What are you talking about? I've never heard of this.
You've never heard? I've told you about this multiple times. You really haven't listened, have you?
At this point, even Joshua seems stunned by Rachel's audacity. Whatever. Today I learned, okay? Let's pretend I never said those things. Just a little misunderstanding, haha. Rachel immediately tried to back out when she realized she was in a bad position, but Ethan and I couldn't just let it go. Joshua approached Rachel with a stern face, seemingly understanding how he felt.
Rachel, you've been treating this place like a vacation home. You've insulted it as old and poor, and even treated my parents like servants.
Cornered by Joshua's sharp question, Rachel tried to dodge. What are you talking about? When did I ever do that? I've been here multiple times to support your parents.
No use playing dumb. I've heard from my parents. And I also heard you earlier ordering top-tier steak because our cooking was subpar.
Apparently, Joshua had pretended to take a shower, but was secretly listening to the conversation in the room. You've heard? What did you hear exactly? Your parents are just trying to frame me.
Still playing dumb? I have all the evidence you need. I've received emails detailing everything you've done, and even have audio recordings of your voice.
Faced with irrefutable evidence, Rachel was shocked but still not willing to give up. That's just my kindness. They're in their 70s. Their legs aren't what they used to be. So I thought I'd give them some exercise. Rachel was desperate, but Joshua had already seen through her.
You're truly despicable. Sorry, I can't trust a word you say anymore. I'm divorcing you.
Rachel seemed to finally get it when Joshua mentioned divorce. Oh, really? So you're saying that too, huh? Fine, then let's get a divorce. She snapped back, pointing at Joshua and shouting,
But remember this, you're the one who brought up divorce, so be ready to pay up in court. Not sure what made her so confident, Rachel stormed out of the house. Later, their divorce did conclude, with a hefty settlement involved. But the kicker? Rachel was the one who had to pay, not Joshua. What? This can't be happening. Why do I have to pay? This is so unfair. She screamed in disbelief, but the reason was quite simple. Rachel had been cheating. And not just with any guys, but with men from popular clubs in Boston. According to Joshua, he discovered that Rachel had been using his credit card for significant expenses. When he tried to confront her, she dodged the conversation, forcing him to hire a private investigator. The investigator found receipts in the trash indicating Rachel's club outings were paid with Joshua's credit card. Photos even showed her at luxury hotels with multiple men. Armed with this irrefutable evidence and backed by his lawyer, Joshua won the settlement in court. Rachel, slapped with the divorce bill, arrogantly thought, "I'll just ask my boyfriends to pay. I've spent plenty on them." But the old saying holds true. When the money's gone, the love's gone. Her club flings promptly dumped her when they realized she couldn't pay. So Rachel had no choice but to pay the settlement, grumbling all the way to the bank. Her life hit rock bottom, disowned by her furious parents. Recently, a friend mentioned seeing her at a soup kitchen in a Boston park. As for us and Ethan, life has turned to peaceful normalcy. Joshua seems to be enjoying his newfound freedom. Yet, we're secretly looking for a new life partner for him, hoping to see a grandchild soon. It's a win-win for us, actually. Our legs are getting a workout from all the running around.
Thank you for everything. I gave my husband a respectful nod, handed him the divorce papers, and left the house. He always put work first and couldn't handle household chores. Without me, he'd surely struggle. Let him realize just how helpless he is. My name is Susan. I quit my job right after we got married and became a homemaker. My husband Robert was my former boss, known for his exceptional work skills. Ever since I started working under Robert, he was always there to help. He often gave me advice about work, and eventually we started going out for dinners, privately. We began dating secretly at work and announced our relationship when we decided to get married. When I shared the news of our marriage, many female colleagues were envious. Becoming a homemaker was Robert's idea. However, once we started our married life, Robert began to look down on me. "You just laze around at home and still get to eat. You're really lucky. Who do you think provides for this lifestyle? You should be grateful to me." If I tried to go out on a weekday, he'd make a displeased face. "Going out for lunch while I'm working? Who do you think earns the money for that lunch? Think about it." I started to feel reluctant to go out, fearing Robert's reaction, and began to stay home more. Is this my life now? Just waiting for Robert to come home? I can't stand this. I felt like I needed a change. Determined, I decided to work outside again. But Robert wouldn't allow me to work part-time. "You want to work? Is my salary not enough for you?" "That's not it." I tried to explain desperately. "I feel suffocated staying at home all the time." "You think of work as just a breather? Are you taking it lightly?" He bombarded me with accusations, but I knew if I backed down, nothing would change. I pleaded with Robert. After much persuasion, he finally agreed to let me work part-time, on the condition that I wouldn't neglect household chores. Working outside after a long time was nerve-wracking, but it felt refreshing. I worked hard to ensure Robert had no complaints about the housework after my part-time job. It was tough initially, but I gradually found my rhythm. Around that time, Robert's mother passed away. I informed my part-time job about the sad news and asked for some time off, which they kindly granted. I went back and forth between Robert's family home and our house, preparing for the funeral and taking care of my father-in-law. After the funeral, Robert told me, You only need to visit my family home every other day. Daily cleaning and laundry aren't necessary, right? Just prepare meals that my dad can easily heat up. It seemed he was concerned that his needs would be neglected if I visited his family home daily. If I continued to care for father-in-law, I wouldn't be able to keep my part-time job. When I expressed this to Robert, he responded with annoyance. It doesn't matter if 1 or 2 employees are absent, right? Just reduce your working days. If they complain, just quit. It's not like you're earning much. It's just a breather for you. Reluctantly, I reduced my working days, but I felt guilty for constantly asking for flexibility. I wish father-in-law could take care of himself, but father-in-law was adamant. Household chores are a woman's job. He wouldn't do any cleaning or laundry. He was also picky about food. This is too salty. Or, I want something else. For common complaints. Because of this, I often returned home late from his place. One such day, father-in-law didn't want to eat the pot roast 2 days in a row. I had to prepare another meal, which made me late. You're late! What were you doing? Where's my dinner? Robert, already home, shouted angrily. I'm sorry, father-in-law wanted something different, so I had to make another meal. I'll serve dinner right away. I served Robert the pot roast I brought back. What's this? You promised to take care of the house as usual, right? If this happens again, you'll have to quit your part-time job. Wait a minute, I was late because I went to your family home, not because of my part-time job. Enough! You're stretched thin because of that part-time job. Don't ever make me wait again after I come home from work. I knew arguing wouldn't change his mind, but I couldn't accept it. I continued to juggle household chores, caring for father-in-law, and my part-time job, sacrificing sleep. Then one day, I received an unexpected call from my mom. Susan, your dad's been diagnosed with a severe illness and needs to be hospitalized. I learned that Dad's cancer was advanced and beyond treatment. I wanted to visit him immediately, but Robert was unsympathetic. Visiting him won't change anything. Focus on our home. Reluctantly, I took early leaves from my part-time job to visit Dad. Half a year later, Dad passed away. While helping my devastated mom with funeral preparations, I informed Robert about the funeral date. His response was intimidating. You'll be back before I return from work, right? I don't want to wait for dinner again. You're attending the funeral too, right? Why would I? It's a weekday and I have work. My dad just passed away. Can't you take paid leave? In theory, yes, but I have important meetings. It's not that simple. It should be a priority to bid farewell to a family member. When your mom passed, I took several days off. I'm still adjusting my work schedule for you. Robert scoffed. Don't compare your part-time job to mine. I have responsibilities you wouldn't understand. I can't just take time off. After more pleading, he reluctantly agreed. Fine, I'll take a few hours off for the funeral. Saying so, Robert forcibly ended the conversation. With the funeral preparations, I visited my family home more often, took more days off from work, and reduced my visits to father-in-law to every 3rd day. Consequently, I could only manage household chores every 3rd day. Robert grew more irritable. You've been slacking off with the chores. You haven't cleaned in 2 days. Because I desperately excused myself to him. I was helping Mom all day 2 days ago, and visited father-in-law yesterday. Excuses again? Your mom has been managing the house for years. Why does she need so much help now? After Dad's passing, she's too devastated to do anything. I want to be there for her. Robert dismissed her grief. She's just being weak. Your dad's illness wasn't sudden. She should have been prepared. This is why I say women. How can you say that? Even if she knew losing a lifelong partner is devastating. Can't you understand her feelings? I'm saying she should face reality. Your dad should have planned better. Leaving without preparing his wife is irresponsible. How can you speak of my family like that? Don't you have any respect for them? What's there to respect? Just because they're older? That's naive thinking. Watching my silent anger, Robert sneered and said, "Why should anyone respect your family? Just because they're older? That's naive thinking, isn't it?" How can you say that? Not just about my mom, but also about my dad, who passed away after a long illness. That was the moment I decided to cut ties with Robert. I can't talk to him anymore. Just being in the same room with him makes my skin crawl. I began to secretly prepare to leave the house, using the funeral preparations as a cover. I discreetly moved my belongings to my parents' home. It was hard to tell my grieving mom about the current situation, but I couldn't bear it any longer. I couldn't stand Robert's attitude, and I wanted to move back home. When I told my mom, she comforted me, saying, "You've done well so far. If Susan wants to come back, I'd be more than happy. It won't be lonely here with you." Thank you, Mom. It's better to free yourself from Robert and find new happiness than to force a marriage. With those words from my mom, I felt reassured and continued my preparations to leave. I kept my emotions in check, flawlessly handling household chores and taking care of my father-in-law. It's just a little longer of enduring doing things for my husband. As long as I did the housework, Robert didn't complain, and we avoided unnecessary conversations. On the day of the funeral, after briefly paying his respects, Robert returned to work without much of a goodbye. "Robert, you're really going back to work, huh?" My mom looked disappointed. Even though she knew about our situation, she had hoped he would take a break from work during this time. Apparently, that's what Mom was expecting. "Did you see, Mom? That's just how he is." Hearing my indifferent comment, my mom replied, "Well, I guess there's nothing we can do." We both felt reassured that our decision to divorce was the right one. After the funeral, as usual, Robert returned from work. "I'm back! Welcome home!" Robert shouted at my curt response. "Welcome home? That's it? I took time off work for the funeral because of you. You should thank me." "Thank you?" "Yes, your family interfered with my work. Now say it!" Robert sat arrogantly on the sofa, waiting for my response. I bowed slightly to him and said, "Thank you for everything so far." "What did you just say? So far? What do you mean?" I quickly handed Robert the divorce papers. "What? Divorce papers? What's this about?" "It means exactly what it says. I want a divorce." Robert burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha! You think you can live without my money? If you have time for jokes, make dinner." "I'm serious. I'm leaving to live with my mom. She's okay with it. I've saved some money from my part-time job, and they're considering offering me a full-time position." "What? A full-time job? For someone as inefficient as you?" "Goodbye." I handed the stunned Robert the divorce papers and left with just one bag. When I arrived at my parents' house, I fell asleep talking about my hardships and memories of my dad with my mom. Robert kept contacting me, but I ignored all his messages. His messages were still condescending. "How can a wife leave her husband like that? Apologize and come back, and I'll forgive you this time." Ignoring him was the right choice. Robert never came to my parents' house. His pride wouldn't allow it. Thanks to that, my mom and I lived peacefully. A few days later, I realized I left something at the house and sneaked back while Robert was at work. The house was a mess. Garbage and dust were everywhere, with fast food wrappers scattered in the kitchen, and wrinkled clothes all over the floor. It seemed Robert hadn't done any housework. I wonder how his dad is doing. As I wandered near Robert's family home, I saw his dad and a caretaker talking at the entrance. Apparently, there were complaints from neighbors about a foul smell from the trash-filled room. "If things don't improve, you need to leave immediately." "I understand. I'll go to my son's place." That's what father-in-law told caretaker. His son's place? If his dad goes there, it'll just add another man who can't do housework, and the trash will pile up even more. Afterwards, I heard from neighbors that Robert's father had packed his bags and tried to move in with Robert, but Robert refused to live with him, leading to a big argument. Their dispute about living arrangements became the talk of the neighborhood, and eventually Robert had to compromise. Even though they ended up living together, predictably, Robert's house turned into a trash heap, causing a stench that bothered the neighbors. Robert, now going to work in wrinkled and dirty shirts, was quickly losing respect from those around him. There were even talks of him being demoted, and he came to apologize at my parents' house. "Susan, I was wrong." "Robert?" Just when I thought he finally understood, he said condescendingly, "Are you satisfied now? I apologized. Now fix your attitude and come back." Robert hadn't changed at all. What exactly did you reflect on? What? Why are you acting so high and mighty? You didn't just give a shallow apology, did you? Faced with my calm tone, Robert was speechless. Please go home. I have no intention of returning to that house. But without you, the house is a mess, and there's my dad to take care of. You just want me back to take care of you and your dad, right? Well, you might think you're competent at work, but if you can't manage your own life, you're worse than a child. What? How dare you talk to your husband like that? Not husband, ex-husband. We're getting a divorce, so we're strangers now. Wait, I don't want a divorce. Shut up. I am not your servant. You always look down on homemakers. Men like you, stuck in the past and domineering, should just be buried in your trash-filled houses. Stay away from me, you arrogant jerk. I shouted at Robert, locked the door behind him, and when I turned around, my mom was clapping, saying, "Well said." After that, I started the divorce mediation process. Fortunately, the offer for a full-time position progressed smoothly, and it seemed I could earn enough to live comfortably with my mom. My mom, who had been down after losing my dad, was gradually regaining her spirits now that I was back. Life with just the two of us is now fulfilling and joyful. According to my lawyer, Robert and his dad are still living in their trash-filled house. Known in the neighborhood as the useless father-son duo, they're the subject of gossip. Robert, unable to sleep properly because of the trash, is always sleep-deprived. As a result, he lost focus, made a significant mistake at work, and was forced to resign. Without the means to hire a housekeeper, their future looks bleak. Looking back, I feel foolish for trying so hard to please Robert. I'm grateful to have escaped a life of constant endurance. From now on, I'll live my life to the full.